Hello everybody, we're back with our second installment of the Ship Deep Dive series. As promised, we're going to do the Assault Frigate Mk2 B. After this, the next in this series is going to be the Interdictor due to popular demand. I've had quite a few comments of people wanting to see me talk about the Interdictor. So we'll get to that one next. I don't know if that'll be the next video. Might sneak in the Imperial Squadron tier list since that is long overdue, but let me know which one you guys would prefer to have next. But like I said, today we're doing the Assault Frigate Mk2 B. We did the A last time, and the B is the much more popular version. So we'll go through just the stats and everything, and then we'll talk about some builds, where it's useful, and then a couple full lists at the end. So, like the A, it is 6 hull, maximum speed 3, exact same nav chart, same defense tokens. It's got a single blue flak instead of double blue. And it has 3 command, 3 squad, 4 engineering, versus the A had 2 squad, so this makes a better carrier. Dice are almost the same, except you lose a blue in the front and the rear. And it is 72 points, so a decent discount over the A. Overall, it is the more efficient ship. Just the A's price is a little bloated for what you get, and while I love that jack-of-all-trades nature that the A can provide, the B is better optimized for a few things that Rebels really want to do. It straight up, if you just need the hull zones, it's just a cheaper version of the B, or the A, excuse me. And then if you need a carrier, it's got that extra squad, and you're saving some points. So that's why you'll see this on the table more often. This has seen play since the game began, pretty much, like since it came out. It has come and gone as like a very meta option, but it has had infinitely more competitive presence than the Mk2 A. And so generally this one works a bit better as a plug and play. You don't have to build around it quite as much as the A to get good use out of it. And we'll go through a couple builds here. Starting off, the most obvious commander to take with it is Akbar. This is, I think, where the Assault Frigate Mk2 B has seen quite a bit of play throughout history, is with Akbar, just because it's a pretty tanky and efficient Akbar platform with the 3 red out the side naturally. So just a couple builds here. That top one is called the Akbar Giga Drill. It's one of the most popular Akbar builds with the Assault Frigate. Basically, its whole thing is it's just going to go around the outside of the battlefield. It's going to shoot once every round, and with that one shot, it's going to deal pretty consistent damage that your opponent has to deal with because of Intel Officer. You don't sacrifice any survivability because you still got ECMs on there, but you are limiting yourself to 1 attack, and so the goal is to make that 1 attack each round count. So that's a very popular build. The other one is the Gunnery Teams build, and this is a much cheaper, I wouldn't say much cheaper actually, without Akbar it's 98 versus 93, so a little bit cheaper. But this is a bit more flexible, just as a you can do multiple of these because you don't have unique cards. But just Gunnery Teams, ECMs, Linked Turbo Laser Towers, it's very balanced. You can still do that single shot with Akbar, but now you give yourself the opportunity to slash if it presents itself. You save a few points, and you're a little bit better against multiple targets with the Gunnery Teams there. So as long as you've got Concentrate Fire tokens or dials to feed Gunnery Teams, this one is just a little bit more flexible in what it can deal with. The other way you see the Assault Frigate Mk2 B often is as a carrier, a dedicated carrier. The Rebels really struggle for good carriers, and so the Assault Frigate fills that hole of a medium-sized, medium-priced carrier that ends up being very efficient. We discussed Gallant Haven in the last episode, so I'm not going to explain how good Gallant Haven is. Needless to say, it fits right in on a carrier here. I've gone with Draven. You can take whatever squad commander you see fit. I would recommend any of Draven, Agate, Riken, Leia in some cases, and maybe Garm. All make pretty good squad commanders. Dodano's okay too if you're going heavy bombers. But Draven's the newest commander, so I figured I'd put him in here. So we've got a build with Gallant Haven, LTTs, ECMs, expanded hangars, flight controllers, and flight commander. A lot of these are seasoned to taste. Gallant Haven is pretty much an auto-include for a lot of lists, particularly for Agate variants, because you're so tanky you can just get right in there in the fight. But it just makes a good carrier with Squad 4 with expanded hangar bay. You know, it's not too expensive. It can push your X-wings, Y-wings, etc. If a bit boring, it's not how I enjoy running it, but it's one of the best carrier options that the Rebels have. The other more niche option that this ship does a little bit better than the Mark II A is as a boarding troopers platform for the Rebels. Again, as you've seen, every build pretty much has LTTs, ECMs, because that gives you a lot of consistency with your shots, gives you a little flak, and makes you pretty tanky. This one, though, I've thrown Ezra on just because I think Ezra is a fantastic card and fits pretty well on an aggressive ship like this. And the boarding troopers just allow you to roll up to something and flip 3 tokens, which, while the damage coming out of the Assault Frigate Mk2 B is not going to necessarily be enough to force your opponent to spend tokens on attacks, at the very least, if you get in there and flip them and deal a little bit of damage, and then have some sort of follow-up, that's where this excels. So think of this as some tech against maybe a Starhawk, or an ISD, or Anakin Venators, something like that. Like I said, it's a bit more niche, but it's one of the better platforms the Rebels have as boarding trooper deliverers. And like I said, it does better at this than the A because it's got that extra squad point, so you're flipping 3 tokens instead of 2. Some things I would not really use the Mark II B for would be, I would not put Paragon on it because your front arc is already so poor. I would also not rely on the Mark II B to do a ton of damage outside of an Akbar list just because you're generally not fitting any crit effects on here. You're not taking XI7s generally because that would be a bit of a waste. So you pretty consistently deal between 3 and 5 damage on a decent roll at around medium range. It's mostly just there as supporting firepower, and so I wouldn't expect anything more than that out of it. And for 72 points, for as tanky as it can be with ECMs and that defense token suite, that's okay if it's just a support piece. But let's look at a couple lists here. This first one is just plugging that Assault Frigate build with Draven in. I put Adar Talon on here. This just happened to be something I had in my list builder, but this is a carrier build with Yavaris and Fen Rao with a Biggs Ball and Nora. Just trying to make use of the good squad pushing ability, the tankiness that Gallant Haven will give your squads. Really trying to make your squads your primary damage dealer. I don't always love to do that because maybe I'll do a future video on this, the whole triple threat thing. I don't like to over-centralize in all your damage coming from squads, and that could be a problem in this list. But this just exemplifies a typical carrier role that an assault frigate could field. Now, you could slim this down. You could take off Adar Talon. You could take off LTTs. Heck, you could even take off Gallant Haven. And this right here is still an effective carrier. You lose some, obviously, but you've saved quite a few points. The other way, or other kind of list that you could see Akbar in, and this is a bit of a meme here, but this is taking that flexible gunnery teams build to the extreme and slapping 3 of them in an Akbar list here. But just if you can get the guns on target, which is not too hard, that's a lot of firepower going at multiple targets because of gunnery teams. So this is kind of exemplifies the classic Akbar fishbowl of this kind of list. For the most part, just wants to go around one side of the board in a bit of a conga line and keep spraying out the side at multiple targets. Which, the Assault Frigate's the best thing the Rebels have in that particular role. It's still tanky because you got ECMs. Still has some rerolls with linked turbo laser towers. I would definitely try to pass out some munitions resupply tokens, both to power gunnery teams and to get a little bit more dice consistency. But this is just an example of the kind of thing you can do with Akbar assault frigates. Obviously, you can put the Giga Drill in a list. I think Angry Ewok has played an Akbar list for a long time that features an assault frigate with the Giga Drill build. Yeah, the Mark II B is solid, if a bit simple. I'm not quite as excited about it as the A, just because the A is weird, and you really have to build a puzzle to make it work. And when it does work, it's great, versus the B is a much simpler ship of, it's straightforward. You're either doing a carrier, or you're doing Akbar, or you're doing some other kind of boarding team shenanigans. But you're running a lot of the same upgrades over and over, and you can just put it on a list. You got 90 points, put an assault frigate in there. Why not? So, one thing I will mention in terms of role is Like I said, it's more of a support firepower platform. Think about its damage output similar to an Architon's. That's also what makes it a bit overpriced. For 72, it is much better priced than the Mark II A. The Mark II A is way overpriced. But damage output, it's really no better than an Architon's or something. It's tankier, absolutely. But the Rebels don't have amazing fire support platforms like you can just plug in an Architon's. The CR90 takes a lot of that role of just having some extra dice, like this build here, either with LTTs and Jaina's or turbo laser reroutes. That fills that throw a few dice at long range to pester things role on the Rebels. And so outside of Akbar or as a carrier, that's why the B is not quite as popular. I think it could use a little bit of love if there was ever to be some sort of rebalance of the game. But it's a very solid ship. So when I recommend those who are looking for a very consistent game in, game out type thing for their list, I would give the B a try, particularly with the commanders I mentioned. But that's all for today. Like I said, next episode of this series, we're going to go ahead and do the interdictor. I don't know which one I'll start with yet. People have been seeming like they want me to look at the combat. Spoiler alert, I don't have good things to say about that ship, but if any of you have a preference on if you'd like me to start with the combat or the suppression refit, you let me know. I'll try to get that one out a little faster. This one came out about a week later than I wanted it to. Just couldn't find the time, but happy to get this out now. And also, like I said at the beginning, the Imperial Squadron tier list is something I still want to do, and so if you guys would rather see that before the next installment of our deep dive series, please leave a comment. And I think I'll also put a poll for that in the community tab. But thank you guys so much for watching. You have a great rest of your day.